Tonight, from Boston, the advocates, Howard Miller, William Rusher, and the moderator, Michael Dukakis.
Good evening and welcome to the Advocates. Every week at this time, we look at an important public issue in terms of a practical choice. And we invite you to participate in the political process by listening to our debate and then sending us your votes. Tonight's issue concerns farming, and specifically our question is this: should large corporations be driven out of farming? Advocate Howard Miller says yes.
Large financial conglomerates are farming rural America for a harvest of dollars and leaving behind them enormous human costs which we all pay for. With me tonight to urge that industrial companies get out of agriculture are Jim Hightower, director of the Agribusiness Accountability Project in Washington, and the United States Senator from Oklahoma, Fred Harris.
Advocate William Rusher says no.
Tonight's proposal is an attempt to turn back the clock of American agriculture 50 years. It will drive up your food bill, increase your taxes, and not even help the small farmers it pretends to protect. With me tonight to tell you why are Russell Jekyll, corn and hog farmer from Delavan, Illinois, Howard Margulis, President for Agricultural Operations of Tenneco, and Professor Willard Williams of Texas Tech University.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now for some background on tonight's question.
The small farmer in America is an endangered species. In the last 20 years, 2 million family farmers have been driven off the land. And Secretary of Agriculture Earl Butz predicts another million of the 2.9 million remaining will leave their farms in the next decade. The farmer, particularly the small farmer, is being squeezed out of business. Increased food prices have mostly benefited the middlemen, not the farmer. While the basic price paid for farm produce has remained relatively stable, the cost of everything the farmer needs to raise that produce has increased dramatically. Farms have survived by becoming more efficient. 30 years ago, the average farmer worked 167 acres of land. Today, the average farm has grown to almost 400 acres. In short, the process that sees fewer and fewer people in farming is a process that sees the land itself being concentrated in larger and larger holdings. Coincident with the decline of the small farm has been the emergence of a new agricultural institution, the giant diversified corporation with farm and non-farm holdings. Such agribusiness giants now account for a growing share of farm production in America. While that share is still relatively small, the impact of corporations able to control every aspect of food production from the field to the supermarket shelf has been profound. The cry of alarm that has arisen from the small farm in America has resulted in legislation now before Congress that would drive these diversified corporate giants out of farming. The legislation, introduced by Democratic Senator Gaylord Nelson of Wisconsin, is called the Family Farm Act of 1972. In the words of the act, it is designed to restore competition to the agricultural industry and to provide for the continuance of the family farm.
Specifically, the Family Farm Act of 1972 would require any individual or corporation that owned more than $3 million in non-farm assets to divest itself of all of its agricultural holdings. It would prohibit certain contractual arrangements between individual farmers and farm processors, and it would encourage individual farmers to market or sell their products through farmer cooperatives. Senator Nelson and others supporting the bill believe that it is an important and necessary first step in reversing American farm policy, particularly as it affects the family farmer. The bill is now in committee, but the sponsors of the bill hope to have it on the floor for debate during this session of Congress. And now to the cases. Mr. Miller, why should large corporations be driven out of farming?
The family farm, according to agricultural efficiency studies of the Department of Agriculture, is happily the most efficient farm in the country. The 1 to 2 man farm, no matter what it is, dairy, peaches, vegetables, or anything else. But that farm, agriculturally efficient, cannot compete against the non-farming industrial companies that are today coming into agriculture. Purex growing strawberries and Boeing potatoes. Why not? Because the non-agricultural company can use financial and tax benefits that have nothing to do with agricultural efficiency. tax write-offs, make little profit but hold on to the land for capital gains, bargain for volume discounts, what the small farm cannot do. And so the small farmer is threatened, and the balance sheet of the large industrial company may on occasion show a profit, but it's profit without value. Because in its wake, the large industrial company that drives small farmers out of business leaves behind human costs that are on no one's balance sheet. Our system of accounting does not tell us how true the cost is when people must leave the farm even though they're efficient and move to cities. What's happened to Ellis Hale and Joe Weishauer does not appear on any corporate balance sheet, but nevertheless it is a human loss to all of us and to the United States.
Here in Arkansas, Ellis Hale tells us how he used to have a chicken farm, but got driven out by the big corporations.
This is broiler house number 1. Over there was number 2. Number 3 and 4 was located down under the hill. We were putting about 250,000 birds out of these buildings every year. But since 1962, we haven't grown one single solitary broiler. Now, one chicken has come off this farm since 1962. And the reason that no chickens have come off of our farm since 1962 is because the big corporation blacklisted us, boycotted us, and were in conspiracy among themselves to stop a broiler growers organization that we were instrumental in forming. I think that the farmer is definitely the most exploited man in the country. And he's being exploited not only by the corporations, but he's being exploited by the Department of Agriculture. I don't contribute to any political fund. I'm just an individual farmer, and that's where the difference is. The corporations have the money, they have the power, they have the politicians, they have enough politicians bought and paid for that they can control the laws that are enacted and the administration of those laws.
Up in Iowa, Joe Weishauer can see that the big corporations are about to move into the hog raising area. He told us about the danger he sees.
Okay, the way corporations are going to get into hog farming, and there's many of them starting this way now, they offer breeding stock to put out for shares or contract. And at first, you're not tied down to a contract to where you have to sell the product. This is going to come later. It's kind of a creeping thing, and the contracts get tighter and tighter, just like they did in the poultry industry. And after a while, you're going to be told where you have to market your product. You're going to be told what feed they have to be fed if your contract's tied in with a feed company. And in effect, after a while, all you're going to be is just a labor for them. You're going to lose all your management decisions. They'll be made by someone else. I don't see possibly how corporations with hired labor can do as good a job as the family farmer who's willing to sacrifice all these things. And he's using his family labor. Hours mean nothing to him. He's willing to make these sacrifices.
Ellis Hale is one of millions of farmers who've been forced off the land in the past 30 years. That fact gives Joe Weishauer a lot to think about.
That can happen all over the United States. And to tell us why we must try and stop it now, I've asked to join us tonight, Jim Hightower.
Welcome to the Advocates, Mr. Hightower.
Thank you. Jim Hightower is director of the Agribusiness Accountability Project in Washington, D.C. Mr. Hightower, is there a threat to the family farm today, and what is it?
Well, there certainly is. The threat essentially is, since about 1945, the rise of corporate power in rural America. Involved here are not just family corporations or minor corporations, but really literally the corporate strength of America. The same giant conglomerates that sit on Wall Street in New York City, that's all across the country, right across to Montgomery Street in San Francisco. IT&T, for example, is involved. Boeing Aircraft is involved. Tenneco, just the giant corporations, the conglomerates that are moving into agriculture. In addition to the conglomerates, there's an enormous rise in vertically integrated agribusinesses. Involved here are the giant processing corporations, the brand names that you find on the grocery store shelves. You can literally just go down a grocery store shelf and practically for every brand name there, Del Monte, Hunt, Heinz, Campbell Soup, Swift, you can assume that most of those are vertically integrating
But don't
production.
those large companies bring efficiencies to agriculture, or do they just bring the advantages of their money?
Well, they do mostly bring the advantages of their money. Efficiency is a myth that's been perpetrated by agribusiness and by its apologists, both in Congress and elsewhere. Efficiency is, for years we had in this country, a family farm system that produced food as efficiently as anybody can produce it. It produced good food and food at a relatively cheap price. Corporate efficiency can be more a matter of business than it is a matter of farming. Corporation, business and farming are two separate pursuits. A corporation like IT&T might be good at getting the telephones to work, but it's not terribly good at getting farms.
What about this remedy that the bill suggests, having the large industrial companies divest themselves of their agricultural holdings? Is that unusual for us in this country?
No, it's not unusual at all, and I think it's a very appropriate step at this time to take. Essentially, we're dealing with a Clayton Act, which is the basic antitrust document of this country. When the Clayton Act was passed, agriculture was exempt, and essentially what this bill does is just put agriculture back in there.
I think I'll have to break in at this point. Mr. Rusher has some questions to ask you, Mr. Hightower, and in the course of your answering them, would you tell us what it means to be a vertically integrated corporation, if you would?
Can you do that briefly to begin?
Yes, vertically integrated corporation or of agriculture essentially means a non-farming corporation that is controlling production.
Why doesn't it also mean a farming corporation that's controlling production? What is there about vertical integration that exclusively pertains to non-farming corporations?
Well, it's the non-farming corporations that are vertically integrating backwards and forwards into the production of food. Now, some farm corporations might move forward themselves.
How about co-ops? There are a lot of co-ops that are vertically integrated, aren't there?
Co-ops, though, are owned and controlled by farmers.
Yes, but they're monopolies in their field. The citrus juice co-ops control 70% of the American production of citrus juice. Why are they not mentioned in the Nelson bill?
Because those are co-ops of farmers, those are producers, and they're not vertically integrated.
Monopolies conducted by farmers themselves are good.
Well, they're not monopolies. I don't think the issue tonight is not co-op power. The issue tonight is corporate power.
Well, the issue tonight is maybe comparing corporate and co-op power and why you exclude one from the bill and include the other, Mr.
Well, if you can show me a co-op that has the resources of IT&T, and I think we'll be talking on the same level.
I would have thought that Sunkist had plenty of resources. And it's
not on the level of IT&T.
Oh, well, come on. IT&T has the resources it needs for what it does. Let's ask you this. The Nelson bill, to begin with, doesn't just apply to large corporations at all, does it?
It applies to corporations with assets of over $3 million.
And not just to corporations, does it?
Persons, partnerships,
Persons
corporations,
too.
conglomerates.
And partnerships also,
right.
As well as corporations. In point of fact, then, the Nelson bill is not aimed exclusively at large corporations at all, is it?
Corporations is aimed at persons, conglomerates, corporations, partnerships with assets of more than $3 million.
A great deal more, yes. Suppose a large corporation, or a bigger individual farmer for that matter, does have advantages from the size of his operation, either efficiency advantages or simply from size, getting credit, things like that. And suppose further that he does pass along his savings to the consumer in the form of lower prices. Are you saying or suggesting that we should pay higher prices to the small farmer in order to preserve the values of, say, of a small farm?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I've said in my opening statement that efficiency is not a factor of bigness.
Well, I'm coming to efficiency, but assuming that there were an advantage to bigness, even in just getting credit, for example, as there sometimes is, should the consumer be willing to pay the higher price to a small farmer?
There are values on the small farm that are worth preserving.
That's what I was getting at. And you do feel that it would be appropriate to pay a slightly higher price in order to preserve those values?
I'm not sure that we have to pay a slightly higher price to it. I'm not willing to concede that you do have to pay that higher
well, let's
price.
examine that question then. If you don't want to concede that, you spoke, and Mr. Miller did, of the larger operations not in fact being more efficient. But in the broiler chicken industry, which Mr. Miller's first farmer had been in, and which was shown to us on film, Ralph Nader's task force in 1971 reported that thanks to the new technology, chickens used to cost in 1950 about 60 cents a pound. In 1970, the price was 42 cents a pound.
The price, though, is a good deal more than 42 cents a pound. The price is also several thousand small farmers like Mr. Haney in the South that are devastated.
Now,
by it.
that's what I'm asking you. Should we be paying higher prices for chickens in order for Mr. Haney to continue?
But that the price has gone down is not a function of Purina's efficiency.
Well, it certainly was sufficient to get Mr. Haney out of the business. The price that
if that's the efficiency you're after, then
well, it certainly is a human value of sorts,
job.
isn't it? Isn't it a human value when we're able to pay 42 cents rather than 60 cents a pound for chicken?
But you pay on April 15th as well as you pay at the supermarket.
Exactly. And Mr. Haney, I assume, is not on, as I understood it, he had another business now. He is not on welfare, so that isn't a question there. He's probably paying taxes like the rest of us. Tell me, why can't the Sherman and the Clayton Antitrust Acts and the Federal Trade Act be used to prevent the kind of conspiracies and blacklisting that Mr. Haney accused?
Mr. Rusher, before Mr. Hale gets very upset at the fact that we're referring to Mr. Haney, I think we ought to clear that up and tell him that it is Mr. Hale.
Mr. Hale, the farmer we saw who had been in the broader chicken business. He accused unnamed people there of conspiracies and blacklisting. Why can't the acts that I mentioned, Sherman, Clayton, and Federal Trade Act, be used to go after those people?
I don't know why they haven't done it before, except that regulatory agencies generally have not been terribly effective and have certainly not been involved in agriculture. You take the FTC, which finally has filed an action against United Brands, but with 2,000 farmers a week leaving the land, I don't think that the farmers of this country are going to be willing to wait.
I don't know. Are you saying that that people are not enforcing the laws? The laws would work if they were enforced?
Sounds like it to me.
But you think they're going then to enforce the law that you want passed?
I think that there will be actions under this law that are possible that are not now being taken. It's an emphasis, a focus that we need on the family farm system in the country.
What about farmers who want to sign up with non-farm corporations like Tenneco?
The bill does not prohibit that.
The bill does not prohibit them from signing up with Tenneco?
Not at all.
I think what you mean is it does not prevent them from selling to Tenneco.
It does not prevent them
from selling. I know that. I said signing up with. Actually becoming a part of the Tenneco operation. As, for example, Tenneco harvests the crops in large areas of California.
Why should Tenneco be allowed to harvest the crops?
Why shouldn't a farmer let them harvest it if he wants to?
Because the one farmer is not the issue. The issue is productivity and the entire agricultural economy. So that's how Ralston Purina began, was with one farmer. I think the lesson is in Ralston Purina.
So that the answer...
I think I have to break in at this point, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. Hightower, for being with us. Mr. Miller?
The bill prohibits his industrial concerns controlling agricultural production, whatever that involves. Prices of broilers fell, but there's no evidence that it fell because Ralston Purina or other companies assumed ownership. We do know that Ralston Purina and other companies were found by the Department of Agriculture to have done that illegally and violated many acts in the process. In fact, the one family farm, the one or two man family farm, is the most efficient in the country. Its productivity rose twice as fast as that of industrial concerns. The only reason larger companies can enter agriculture is because of the accidents of their financial and tax abilities. Nothing to do with agricultural efficiency. Let's protect agricultural efficiency and the human values of the family farm.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We'll be back to you later for your rebuttal case, but now let's turn to Mr. Rusher and find out why large corporations should not be driven out of farming.
Once upon a time, the small family farm was the perfect way to carry out agricultural production. In some cases, it still is. But in many others, the small farmers have had to incorporate and enlarge their own operations or band together in big cooperatives to process and market their products efficiently. In a few instances, corporations in other lines of business have thought it might be worthwhile to go into farming, from the seed to the consumer, so to speak, using their capital and their marketing know-how to do what the average farmer could not reasonably be expected to do. Tonight's proposal pretends to concentrate on running those few large corporations out of farming, supposedly to help the small farms. But the truth is that this bill would create chaos in a huge section of American agriculture, including all the most productive parts of it. And the irony is that it would still not do a blessed thing for the large part of American agriculture that really needs help, the 60% of American farms that make less than $1,700 a year. In short, the Nelson Bill might be called the Farm State Politicians Scapegoat Act of 1972. Let's hear first from an independent hog farmer who competes with corporations quite successfully, Mr. Russell Jekyll.
I was married during my last year at the University of Illinois, and I graduated in vocational agriculture and came back to the farm in 1950. And at that time, the farm was a general farm. We had a number of different kinds of livestock, some pigs and cattle, milk cows, some chickens. So it became pretty obvious that if this farm were to support two families, that we were going to have to concentrate and specialize in some business. It was decided to go into the hog business. And from that point, the farm has grown from, say, a 135-acre rented farm to something over 500 acres now. Also have a pork production unit that's capable of producing in excess of 5,000 hogs per year.
Mr. Jekyll has left the farm in the hands of his father and one assistant to be with us tonight. Mr. Jekyll.
Welcome to the Advocates, Mr. Jekyll.
As I said, Mr. Jekyll's a corn and hog farmer from Delavan, Illinois. Mr. Jekyll, your farm, as we saw, started rather small and has prospered. How did that come about, sir?
Well, for the last two generations, almost two generations, it's been operated as a family enterprise. We've tried to adopt new and better methods and ideas as they've come along. We've taken the profits from the business and along with borrowed money, put this back into the business to help it grow. We've tried to adopt efficient business management ideas, and along with what we think a good deal of enthusiasm and optimism and plain hard work, we've tried to make a real go of it.
Mr. Jekyll, you saw Mr. Miller's hog farmer on film expressing his fear of the corporations moving in on the hog farmers. How do you feel? Do you fear the competition of the corporations?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Well, we've seen some large corporations try to get into this business, especially our type of business, and very frankly, the management know-how is just not available, and they seem to have all sorts of difficulties. It takes a good deal of experience to sort of put this know-how together.
One last question. Would the Nelson bill, if it were passed, help you or hurt you?
No, I don't think it would hurt us too much. I can see maybe in the future that the possibility might exist if we needed large amounts of capital that some of these sources of capital would not be available to us.
And I take it would not help you, you feel?
Right.
I have
All right.
no further questions.
Mr. Miller has some questions for you, Mr. Jekyll.
Mr. Jekyll, you run a successful operation, and you think there's value in the family farm in the United States.
Right.
There's great value in it. And I take it to agree, and the Department of Agriculture reports what you've told us, that the family farm not only can be, but is as efficient as a large corporate.
I think so.
Farm. Now, you talk about competing with a large corporate, non-farming corporation. Now, there are non-farming corporations that have entered agriculture not for the return from agriculture, for example, but simply to hold on to the land and wait for capital appreciation. They don't care much about that immediate profit return. You think you could compete with such a corporation?
Sir, I've got to primarily tell you about my own experiences and those that I've seen in cases where they've tried to get into our type of business where sizable knowledge and where a lot of technology and know-how is needed. They just haven't been able to put this together.
Oh, well, we're going to hear from a subsequent witness who I think thinks large corporations can do very well. The Farm Quarterly Journal reports in 1969 that the size of corporations makes a real difference. It reports cases of up to a 10% discount for large industrial corporations in buying farm equipment when they order over $250,000 or more. That is, the amount of the purchase gives them enormous discounts on farm equipment. That's true, isn't it?
Well, I would think it would help.
It would be. Would you think, Mr. Jekyll, a very interesting question that Mr. Rusher raised that I'm interested in your view of. Suppose that large corporations could enter and for whatever advantage lower prices somewhat. Let's not talk about the amount, but a bit. Do you think it's worth it for the country because of the value of the family farm, family farms that now exist? Do you think it's worth it for the country to preserve it because of the social values, because of preserving rural life, preserving the kind of life you lead?
I rather feel that it's the kind of efficient system that's going to evolve that's a real important part of this thing. And I'm not sure who's exactly going to get to do this, whether it's an individual, a corporation, the family farm, but I think that if we continue with our free enterprise system, as we would all hope that we would, that the real efficient unit will prevail.
So it wouldn't bother you if large, even non-farming corporations that could get discounts on farm machinery, get lower rates on bank loans, get tax write-offs against its non-farm profits, if those organizations came in and hurt family farmers, that wouldn't bother you?
Sir, the real measure is going to be whether they do an efficient job out on the farm. I think the things that you mentioned are maybe incidental.
But their tests of efficiency are quite different. I mean, they may have lower costs having nothing to do with their farm efficiency because of their ability to get money, equipment, and write off against other profits. They may simply have a different balance sheet than you do because they have lots of non-farm business. So what's profit to them may not be profit to you.
But it's an interesting thing. But we've not seen these things materialize, and
happened all over the South in the broiler industry. That's exactly what happened. We had industrial concerns going in with the capacity to tie up farmers by selling them seed, tie them up on long-term contracts, and simply because they didn't care. They had other profits so they could stay in farm losses. How can you compete against the company that looks at losses differently? You have to make a profit to survive. A company that can write farm losses off against its profits, how can you compete against it?
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, but I have to interrupt and say thank you very much for being with us, and keep the cost of pork chops down, would you please, Mr. Jekyll? Thank you. Mr. Rusher.
And now, what about those farmers who have chosen to work with the so-called conglomerates? In Indio, California, the date capital of the United States, the date growers were in trouble. In 1969, they made a contract with HMT, a subsidiary of Tenneco, to buy, process, and market their dates. Today, the date processing plant in Indio is in full swing. Sales are up, prospects are bright. Here is what date grower Don Mitchell thinks of the new arrangement with HMT.
HMT has been in the date business 2 years. The big carryover that was breaking our back is now gone. We do have a more hopeful picture of the future.
You had a big inventory a couple years ago before HMT came in?
We had a carryover that had accumulated over a number of years that we couldn't sell without giving it away. And the change has been very healthy.
How has your income been affected by your relationship with them?
Well, there's been not an enormous increase, but enough better so that I feel far happier about the future than I did before.
Do you feel that they're competing with you in any way?
Well, they're selling my fruit. Why should they compete with me?
But they're not buying date gardens or buying property?
No, but I don't think I would object if they did, if we got a fair deal from them.
But they're not putting anybody out of business or driving the family farmer off his land?
No, they've improved the picture here for the date growers. There's no question about that.
And now let's hear from the chief executive of HMT, that very large corporation, Mr. Howard Margulis.
Welcome to the Advocates, Mr. Margulis.
Mr. Margulis, as I said, is president of HMT, which is the agricultural division of Tenneco. Mr. Margulis, you are the president of a very large corporation engaged in agriculture. Does your operation represent a threat to the small farmers?
Not at all. In fact, just the opposite. We depend greatly on the small farmer. 80% of our total sales of fresh fruits and vegetables are derived from small farmers, and only 20% are derived from our own farmlands. So without the small farmer, we would find ourselves without a product and virtually out of business.
What do you provide for them?
We provide a vehicle, in reality, to them, or for them, in order to market their crops. We provide a marketing expertise, we provide advertising, promotions, we provide packing houses for them, which would, if it were not for our providing this, the small farmer that's got 10 or 20 or 40 acres would find himself in a position of frankly, not knowing what to do with his product.
I wanted to ask you, what if the Nelson Bill became law and your corporation was forced out of the farm business altogether? What would happen to the farmers like Don Mitchell, the date grower from Indio?
I think Mr. Mitchell pretty well answered it, and I think there's plenty of Mr. Mitchells all over the state of California, and that not only would we be put out of business, I think that the small farmer, he too, will be put out of business because of the passage of the Nelson Bill.
Has Tenneco, to your knowledge, ever been accused of squeezing out a small farmer?
Frankly, Tenneco is accused of a lot of things almost every day, and I would imagine that some of the accusations are part of driving the small farmer out of business, but to the best of my knowledge, this is untrue, completely so.
In other words, to your knowledge, there has not been such a case?
None whatsoever, no.
What benefits does Tenneco's operation provide for consumers, lastly?
This will have to be a very short answer, Mr. Margolis.
We feel that that our Sun Giant program, which will be a national brand, quality-controlled, high-flavored attempt on our part to distribute fresh fruits and vegetables throughout the United States, similar to what Del Monte is doing in the canned food area. We feel that this is going to be a real asset to the consumer and that we're going to make available to her high-quality fresh fruits and vegetables.
No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Miller has some questions for you, Mr. Margolis.
Mr. Margolis, up until 1970, you weren't part of Tenneco. It was your own company.
Correct.
Wasn't it? And you just became a member of Tenneco. And would you have been barred if you were now not part of Tenneco? Does your operation require more than $3 million in non-farm assets?
In non-farm assets? No.
No. So that just as you were doing before 1970, you would simply not be a part of Tenneco. You would continue to do everything you now do.
Mr. Miller, one point, and that is we don't want to be about 10% as effective as I think we are today.
Well,
because we need the capital with which to advertise and to promote and distribute. And without Tenneco and without the resources behind us, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing for Mr. Mitchell on his dates.
Well, let's see if that's true. The bill says you can't control production. You don't have to control date production to advertise it and sell it throughout the United States. Throughout this country, there are dozens of companies that buy and sell as wholesalers. You don't need to control the date production, do you?
True, but by the same token, we provide many other services other than just sales and promotion to him.
But you don't need to control the date production to do what you do. You do it very well, and you have no need to control the date production.
Well, we feel we're doing a more effective job for Mr. Mitchell by controlling it for him.
Do you control it? Do you have to control it? That's what I'm asking you. Do you have to control the
Control? What do you mean by control?
Well, tell me what you do. What do you have to do? Everything that you've told me is permitted. Buying from him, advertising, selling, as long as you don't control the production.
Along with dates, we harvest his crop, for instance, and harvest the crop of many others. We provide the equipment and machinery and tools with which to do it.
He could do that himself.
No, the 10-acre grower, I'm sorry, he couldn't do it.
He could form a cooperative and do that.
Well, he had a co-op, and the co-op went broke. That's why we're there now.
Before you did his selling for him, of course, but you could make an arrangement with him.
I don't know. All I know is prior to our entry into it, the co-op was bankrupt, and they asked us to come in, and I think we've saved the industry.
And I think you've done very well, and I think you could do very well even with the Nelson Bill, and I congratulate you. You do more than market. Tenneco also owns land, doesn't it?
Yes, we do.
It owns lots of land.
Yes, we do.
It owns 130,000 acres?
Approximately 100,000 acres in Kern County.
In Kern County in the San Joaquin Valley alone.
Yes.
And you've recently sold some also.
Yes, we just recently sold a substantial amount of acres.
There's a real difference in the San Joaquin Valley between towns that are near large land holdings and small land holdings, aren't they? Are you familiar with the classic study of two towns in the valley, the town of Arvin and the town of Dinuba, and the impact of being near large or small?
You know Dinuba?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and that the study found that Dinuba, which was near the small towns, had twice as many retail stores, and twice as large retail sales, whereas in the large land holding town, 2/3 were employed as farm laborers. In the small town, only 1/3 by. There's social costs. The question I'm getting to, do your balance sheets reflect the costs you put on a community near your large landholding?
No, but our balance sheets also reflect that we spent over $12 million in new plants in Bakersfield alone to take care of small growers' products, and we're employing in excess of 1,200 people. Without the infusion of our capital there, these people would be without a job.
No, the contrasting study, because that was the purpose of the Arvin Dinuba study, the classic study of towns near small land holdings, near large land holdings. The purpose was that the towns near small land holdings were economically healthier, provided more retail trade, and had more self-employed people than the town near large land holdings. Now, that impact on the towns near you don't really care about.
Well, they are near us, both of them.
Both of them are near you. Yes.
We do care.
You do care.
Certainly we care.
And if there were small land holdings, if you didn't own 100,000 acres, if those were broken up, perhaps even as the Reclamation Act might require, to 320-acre parcels, perhaps all those towns would be healthier.
Well, I think that's just a supposition on your part.
Well, it's
On
a
that note,
supposition
gentlemen,
supported
on
by...
that note, we'll have to end it. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Rusher, another witness.
Now let's hear a view of this from the standpoint of agricultural economics. I call upon Professor Willard Williams.
Welcome to the Advocates, Professor Williams.
Professor Williams is Professor of Agricultural Economics at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, I believe.
Yes.
Professor, we've heard a lot about the threat of giant corporations to the small farmers. Just how serious is it?
In my view, it's an unadulterated exaggeration that is designed to take the attention off the real problems that are faced in agriculture today.
I take it that there are real problems in American agriculture.
There are, and there have been for a half century or more. And these have nothing to do with corporations today.
What are those problems?
The matter of substantial improvements in technology over the years, the absolute demand to have larger farms and fewer farms. This was coming regardless of the issues here today. These are the problems that are affecting the giants today, as well as the small ones. The matter of highly varying prices, the matter of persistently low returns to resources invested in agriculture, the need for a great deal more capital.
Now suppose the Nelson bill were passed. Would it help this situation in any serious way?
In fact, I agree with you. It would cause chaos in a great part of the agriculture that I know about. We have a great many large-scale partnerships, individuals who own more than $3 million outside of agriculture. These are some of the white hope we have for agriculture that perhaps will be able to cause it to survive and provide under the low-price food policy of the government today.
And the effect of the Nelson bill would then be what with respect to farming?
Well, it would disrupt the structure, the organization of a good part of agriculture, and cause sort of a caste system to develop in agriculture. How would you would be saying to agriculture, you must stay there, you can't be anything else.
But don't giant corporations drive out the small farmer, as Mr. Miller and his witnesses have suggested?
No, in more cases than otherwise. And this is widely recognized by the farm papers and by informed producers. They are helping producers more than otherwise. And some of the larger ones are investing in large acreages in, let's say, northern Florida that need to be drained, have heavy capital investments in the desert areas of California, in western, eastern Oregon. Areas that need enough capital that no individual farmer could possibly.
And these are areas.
Professor Williams, I'm going to have to break in and let Mr. Miller ask you some searching questions on these subjects. Mr. Miller.
Professor Williams, as an agricultural economist, do you think there's a value for the country in preserving the family farm?
Well, we've always had an argument about what the value of family farm is. I know a family farm that owns $3 million.
No, you know what we're talking about.
No, yes,
I do. The question is, because it's a hot debate in agricultural policy.
If you're talking about the family farm of the 1920s, it's gone.
No, I'm talking about the family farm that exists
today. What is the family farm
400-acre, 1 or 2 man
What
farm.
is the family farm today?
What is the family farm today? Let me give you the average, the size that it's gone to, 380, 400 acres.
That is a Midwest farm. I know many family farms that are in the Midwest grain farmers that are 3,000 or 4,000, 5,000 acres. I know some in Texas that are several hundred sections.
You know what I'm asking you, and I'd like the answer. The question is, given the average size farm that exists, that's farmed by one family, the kind of farm that Mr. Hale had, the kind of farm that Mr. Weissauer has, the kind of farm that Mr. Jekyll has, is there a virtue to the country in having policies trying to preserve that family farm?
I grew up on such a farm, and I was told what prices we would pay, and I was told what prices I would receive. I was told by the bank how we would live. And I moved out of agriculture because I didn't want that kind of freedom.
I have to just ask you the question again. Is the kind of farm that Mr. Jekyll has and that we've heard about worth preserving, assuming there are a great many more like him, and there are?
If you agree that if we permit him to grow and develop to the kind of industrialized, commercialized agriculture that we must have to fit your supermarkets, to fit your consumer requirements, to fit the kind of society we've developed today, then I agree with you. But if you do not, that is, if you're saying, let's keep him the same size he is, or let's keep these small farmers out here struggling and living the way I've seen a great many live.
Oh, but you know no one's saying that. That's not
Yes,
what the bill says, and that's
it's my
not what we're
business
saying.
to know.
Yes, of course you know no one's saying. Do you agree with the Department of Agriculture that the most efficient farming unit in the country generally is the 1 to 2 man farm?
This is changing very rapidly. A 1 to 2 man farm can operate several thousand acres today.
I know that, but that's what the studies conclude.
And they also can, I know many that own elevators, that own feedlots. We have multi-million-dollar feedlots operated by a family.
Well, what is the virtue, then, of permitting non-farming corporations, who have to have, after all, more than $3 million in assets to come in the Nelson bill, what's the virtue of permitting them to farm?
The virtue is this, that the big problem of agriculture is acquiring enough capital in some way or another to survive. In no area of the country is the average size farm equal to the optimum, to the size that it can operate efficiently. They've always been behind.
We can help the farms acquire capital. They can borrow capital, can't they?
And the big corporations have been able to help. In many instances, farmers develop the kind of capital by drilling the wells, by developing the land, by putting in the drainage. And many of them have turned then the land over to farmers to use.
Yes, and there's no other way that capital could be acquired?
We've had a big problem. We've had the government trying to help him for 50 years now.
Very successfully. I mean, farm productivity is much greater in terms of rise than industrial productivity.
We haven't solved these problems where we get $30 hogs one year and $16 hogs the next.
Gentlemen, I have to interrupt. I have to interrupt. Professor Williams, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Mr. Rusher.
It isn't altogether clear, but if I understand what Mr. Miller is probing at, he seems to be saying that because there is a certain virtue or mystique in the family farm as he imagines it, as Professor Williams correctly said about 50 years ago, that there should be some sort of a subsidy paid, either by consumers or by government or by someone to keep it there. I don't think the farmers of themselves, the farmers of America themselves, want that. I think they're too individualistic to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Rusher. And now let's return to Mr. Miller for his rebuttal argument in favor of driving large corporations out of farming.
There's no need for a subsidy, though I think if one were required to preserve the family farm and the kind of advantages in the towns surrounding the family farms, it would be worth paying it. There's no need for a subsidy because the 1 to 2 man farm is the most efficient farm. What's happening is that others that simply know how to manage money better are affecting it. And it's justified in the name of competition. But for the father of United States Senator Fred Harris, it's not competition. It's a stacked deck.
From Oklahoma, the father of Senator Harris talks about his small farm and what the big corporations are doing to him.
Well, I think they're cutting us plumb out because the big corporations can operate cheaper than the little farmer can operate. That's just like your chain stores. Your big chain stores can buy, they can sell groceries cheaper than the little operator can buy them. And that's the way your big corporations are doing. They're cutting the little guys plumb out. We can't live on what we're doing. Well, they can take it as a volume of business, and they can make money out of it. But look at the poor people, they're cutting plumb out. Well, what I'm trying to get at now, I think every man was created equal. And if you give him a chance to do what he wants to do, I think every man has got enough pride in all to want to do it by himself. And he don't want nobody to tell him how to do it. He needs to be smart enough to do it himself. But the big corporations that think, well, hell, he can't make it, and we'll just have him make it. We'll give him $2 a day or $3 a day, and we'll run it, and we'll make that damn money. And that's the way it looks to me, and I don't want nobody to tell me how to do it or when to do it. I'm too old for that. I'm 64 years old, and I've always made my own living. I've never been on relief. I've never drawed no commodities. Don't have no education. And I think if you'd give the people a chance, they would do the same thing. I'm no smarter than nobody else. I just try to make my own living. I lived on this place all my life. When I was raised up, there was a family on every quarter of land there was in this country, and everybody was happy, and everybody was making a living. They didn't have a lot of money, but they was all living. They was happy. And it was a family on every quarter. Now then, there's a family about every 8 or 10 miles.
We have with us Mr. Harris's son, United States Senator Fred Harris.
Welcome to the Advocate, Senator Harris. And if anybody who's been watching us has been counting, I think this is your 3rd appearance in the Advocates in as many months, and we really appreciate your coming to us again and sharing your thoughts and concerns on these issues with us.
Thank you.
Senator Harris, is it in the natural order of things that industrial companies get into agriculture, that Ralston Purina grow chickens and Dow grow lettuce and Purex grow strawberries?
No, it's really unnatural. They're not more efficient at farming. They're more efficient at harvesting from us and from the federal taxpayers with tax subsidies and labor law subsidies, irrigation water law subsidies. Even college agricultural economists help them out, sometimes with federal money.
We've talked about the effect on rural America, but when farmers leave the land and come to the cities, does that have an effect on urban America as well?
Yes, I served on the Kerner Commission, as you probably know, which made that study of the cities back in 1967. And one of the things we found was absolutely true, that if you continue to have, as we do now, 800,000 people a year coming on into these cities, you simply can't catch up with what are almost already insoluble problems.
Is there a virtue in farming or anyplace else simply in being bigger? Is that something we ought to promote?
No, I think that generally you'd say bigness is bad if it's for private profit, and if it means that you're exploiting labor, if it means that you get control of markets so that you can drive up prices. I think by and large that's what's happened, and I don't think that's good in America.
Tell us about the effect on the country. I've spoken about the Arvind Anuba study. Is there a value in preserving the family farm and the countryside that surrounds it, the community?
Yes, Thomas Jefferson thought so, and a lot of other smart people have felt that our kind of democracy probably thrives better where people can be small enough or in small enough communities to belong to things, to have organizations, to have smaller retailers, to have churches and so forth. The Arvind Anuba study is just a landmark study, and it shows in California one town with a big corporation owning nearly everything, one with a lot of small farmers. There was twice as many social and political organizations and so forth in the place where there were small farmers. I think that's good for America.
What should our national policy be? Should we encourage large companies to take over, or should we really be promoting other things in rural America?
Very short answer to this.
We should stop subsidizing their takeover of agriculture.
Thank you, Senator.
Your old friend, Mr. Rusher, is here to ask you some questions. Senator.
Senator, am I correct in believing that from 1954 to 1969, under Section 22 of the State Constitution of Oklahoma, corporations were prohibited from farming in the state of Oklahoma?
Yes, but it's my impression, though I haven't been in the Attorney General's office or anything, that was not a self-executing provision in our law.
No, it was, however, the uniform interpretation, and then in 1969, the court ruled that they could farm. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with the exact details of it, but by and large...
By and large, that would be true.
No, well, I don't know whether that's true. I was just going to say, Oklahoma, North Dakota, and Kansas, I think rightly, a long time ago, said corporate agriculture is bad. We haven't enforced that as well as we ought to, though.
Well, what I'm getting at is, how could your old pappy tell us about his small farm and what the big corporations did to him and how they're just driving the little fellas plumb out of it?
Well, that's exactly what is happening.
Corporations were not even permitted under the state constitution of Oklahoma.
Well, that's exactly what is happening. For example, in vertical integration...
Was it just the thought of them that drove him out of it? Or,
No, the vertical integration of the livestock industry, for example, has not been prohibited. It isn't under the Kansas anti-corporate law. So you're getting a lot of oil companies, for example, now, getting into huge livestock production operations, which ought to be prohibited, in my view.
Mr. Miller seemed to think that the Nelson bill, if passed into law, wouldn't affect Tenneco's operations. Do you agree, and do you approve?
Well, why are you against it if it doesn't, then?
I'm not sure that I consider Tenneco what I'm here to defend. I'm here to defend higher values. But just tell me, Mr. Miller went through quite an elaborate locution to prove that Tenneco wouldn't be put out of the farming business. Do you think it should be?
No, I think he was asking...
Are you for Tenneco being in its farming operations?
I'm strongly opposed to that. I think that's really bad for America.
Don't you think Senator Nelson...
Terrible for California, too.
...ought to redraft his bill to include something about that?
Well, I think it already applies to them, and if it doesn't...
You disagree with Mr. Miller about the interpretation?
No, and I think Mr. Miller doesn't take any different position from what I do.
Well, maybe not. I don't know. It seemed to me he did. Back to the question...
Your man from Tenneco you brought on as a witness should be in favor of the Nelson bill. I took it he was against it.
He is, but he's fascinated by Mr. Miller's interpretation that it doesn't apply to him.
Mr. Rusher, let me break in for a second. Senator, nobody has mentioned farm laborers here, and it's my impression that Cesar Chavez and his people have had an easier time organizing big farmers and big corporate farmers than small farmers, and they can get collective bargaining with them much more easily. Now, you're a man who's concerned about farm labor. Isn't one argument for big corporate farms that the farm laborer can be treated better because he can bargain collectively with them?
No, I don't think that's so. First of all, there's the biggest part of corporate agriculture is totally unorganized and wildly opposed to being organized. But if you're a small grower, you're worried about having to compete with all these big subsidies that these corporations get, and so you don't want to be organized as one more disadvantage as against those big corporations. If we could break them up, then I think it'd be easier for everybody to be organized, and I'm for them being organized and for a minimum wage in agriculture across the board, small or little.
I might add that if Senator Harris is on the advocates much more, we'll have to get him a garden after so he can be organized too. Senator, tell me, back to efficiency. I have here a report of the United States Department of Agriculture's Economic Research Service dated November 1971 entitled Midwestern Corn Farms, which I assume you might be to some degree familiar, and it says in the abstract at the top of it, rates of return on investment are greater for the large operations because of economies of size.
Are you arguing with the United States Department of
Not a
Agriculture?
bit, are you?
No, and your agricultural economist, as I understood, said, yes, the USDA is right, or at least didn't disagree with it as far as the president is concerned.
He said the USDA was right in this. I don't think he said that the USDA was right in saying that small farms were necessarily as efficient. What about the statement? Rates of return on investment are greater for the large operation because of economies of size. Is that right or wrong?
Show me the balance sheet, but you cannot deny that one or two family farms, according to one or two man farms, according to the USDA, and you surely don't discount that source, are just as efficient as the larger
Far from discounting that source, I am holding its report in my hand and trying to get you to agree with it.
Well, you're trying to pick up an isolated example.
An isolated example like Midwest Corn Farms.
Well, that certainly is an isolated example.
Say.
Do you disagree with the USDA's figures?
I agree exactly with what they said.
Well,
tell me, should we favor corner grocery stores over supermarkets?
In what capacity? In what way?
Any capacity.
We ought not to subsidize.
Do they have a value? Do they have a value to preserve? Isn't it in the interest, really, of all the people of the United States, including in the very long run, the little old corner grocer who was running a small operation, that we should eventually get to a more efficient and larger operation?
Listen, if the little one is driven out, like they are in agriculture, by tax subsidies, labor law subsidies, irrigation water law subsidies,
aside from that,
and are in violation of the antitrust...
I'm talking about the value.
Well, you're not either. The antitrust laws are being violated, then they ought to be enforced. I would just want to make those antitrust laws available in agriculture.
Why aren't they available now?
They're not. The law doesn't allow. That's what we're trying to do.
What do you mean it doesn't
allow?
That's
what the whole
Sherman
argument's
Antitrust
about.
Act and the Clayton Act don't exclude farms? What do you mean?
Why, they certainly do.
Where and when?
When the Clayton Act, which is the Basic Act, was written.
No, the Sherman Act.
Well, talk about the Clayton Act because that's what the Nelson bill goes to. It
applies
applies in industry, it ought to apply in agriculture.
Yeah, sure. What about the Sherman Act? Why can't the laws we have be used?
Well, if you like the laws, what's the matter with the Nelson law?
Because we don't need it. It is going to do things. It's going to hurt all sorts of people in an attempt to wreak vengeance on a few large corporations. It's
Obviously,
going to hurt an awful lot of small people.
Obviously, that's where I and my dad, who's a farmer, disagree with you and others from New York.
I'm not
and
worried about him as long as that Constitution of the state of Oklahoma stays there and keeps them out.
I want to enforce the Constitution of Oklahoma.
Why don't you? I think that's not bad an idea. You mean to tell me that unenforced corporations drove your dad to these straits that he told us about?
A good part of that. That's true all around America. That's exactly right.
You suggested...
And they're getting all these big farm subsidies and tax subsidies to do it.
You suggested at one point that farming should be made attractive to keep people from moving to our crowded cities.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it be more sensible to make it attractive for business and industries, light industries appropriately, to move out into what is now strictly rural territory and so thin out the ghettos just a little bit and make, isn't that the appropriate direction rather than subsidizing some kind of a green rural Arcadia where people will stay and therefore not go in to make better.
Senator Harris, I can't
let
you answer that question.
Yeah.
And it's nice to know where you got that accented. Obviously, it's from your dad. Thanks very much for being in the Advocates again. Thank you. All right, Mr. Miller, you have 1 minute to summarize your case.
The case of Tenneco is instructive because it does different things. It owns 130,000 acres of land in the San Joaquin Valley, and its large land holdings contribute to a more depressed economic pattern for all the towns around those large land ownings. It would have to sell those land holdings under the bill. It could, however, like any other corporation, buy produce and sell it and market it and advertise it. The bill doesn't stop that. What the bill goes to is the effect on rural America, the harmful effect of the large land holdings, subsidized not because they're more efficient, not like the supermarket that drives the corner grocery store out of business. That is on a level of competition. But because the large corporations work on a different balance sheet, they can afford losses, they get the tax write-off. Let's have genuine competition based on what agriculture can do.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Rusher, you too have 1 minute to summarize your case.
To hear Mr. Miller talk, you would think that tonight's proposal will chase Wall Street out of farming, reduce tensions in our cities, and transform rural America into a bucolic landscape of small, green family farms. But the real effect of this bill, as Professor Williams pointed out, would be to create havoc among thousands of partnerships and similar enterprises, which by no stretch of the imagination can be called giant conglomerates, but which produce 2/3 of America's food. And even driving out the few conglomerates would only force farmers like Don Mitchell, the date farmer whom you saw earlier, who works with the conglomerates, back to uneconomic methods and ultimately into bankruptcy. Is that progress? Wouldn't it be far better for Mr. Miller and Senator Nelson and Senator Harris to devote their talents to helping to train or relocate the 60% of America's farmers who earn less than $1,700 a year? Perhaps there are votes to be had by blaming the ills of American agriculture on the larger operations that inevitably accompany progress. But in the long run, everybody pays for such demagoguery: the taxpayer, the consumer, and even the small farmer himself. I urge you to vote no on tonight's question.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now it's time for you at home to act and to express your views on tonight's question. And it's important that you do so because senators and congressmen and others who are in government have told us how closely they follow the advocates, and particularly the advocates poll, those opinions that you, our viewers, send in. Over 500,000 letters have been received since the advocates poll first started 2.5 years ago. So write us, the Advocates, Box 1972, Boston 02134. And as week in and week out the advocates debate questions calling for action by the people who represent us in government, it is a way for you at home to register your views on what America should be doing and to know that these views will be counted and that the results will be passed on to the people who represent you in Washington. So we urge you to write for the common good that results when government knows how citizens feel about the vital issues of the day. Yes or no, what do you think? The question on which you'll be voting: should large corporations be driven out of farming? Remember that address, the Advocates, Box 1972, Boston 02134. Recently, the Advocates debated the question, should the states raise all public school funds and distribute them equally? Of the more than 2,700 viewers across the country who sent us their votes, 1,562 or 57% were in favor of the proposal, and 1,151 or 42% were opposed. 24 expressed other views. And now let's look ahead to next week.
The sale of sex is estimated to be a $2.5 billion per year business. It is viewed by many as not only a tragedy, but an affront to any decent society. Some sociologists, however, feel that while prostitution may be both degrading and exploitive, it is at worst a victimless crime. That law enforcement could better spend its time and energies in combating more serious problems of violence and robbery, as well as white-collar embezzlement and government corruption. Should prostitution be legalized? A question next time for the Advocates.
Thanks to our advocates and to our witnesses, I'm Michael Dukakis. Please join us again next week at the same time. Thank you and good night.
The Advocates as a program takes no position on the question debated tonight. Our job is to help you understand both sides more clearly. This program was recorded.